Okay, to hell with it. You know what? All right, there we go. It's acting weird. I don't know. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 54 of Step into the Paranormal. My computer is like flipping out.
In Dave's defense, 3 minutes we've been scrambling, trying to, something went wrong.
This is the computer we usually use. So it completely freaked out. Don't know why. He used it last night. Go figure. Plus, she's sitting here, whatever. We have two demonologists tonight. So I scrambled to get my new computer up, which is the one that has a powerful blah, blah, blah. Got it working fine. It's flipping out now, and all of a sudden lost camera, lost audio. Now it took us out of the video. So if you lose the feed, we didn't die. I swear.
Well, it started I was doing an interview last night, and the computer started acting up. So anyway, take a deep breath, count to 3.
1, 2, 3.
It's not that bad. We have
I got news. I got news. I went on a date today, and she's real, and she's pretty.
Well, the definition of paranormal is something that's just outside of the norm.
Yes.
So I guess that fits in. We have a very special show tonight. I've been waiting to get these guys on here. They are very special gentlemen.
Absolutely.
And it's not because they're our friend or whatever. It's because of who they are and what they do.
Some amazing stuff. We worked with them in several cases, and some amazing guys. Let's introduce James Anito and Carl Jones. What's up, guys? So, gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we suddenly disappear. It's not you all. I swear to God.
I can speak quietly. If you want.
No, it's not you. You're not giving the feedback. When I talk, I can hear you, my voice in your speaker.
Okay.
You can talk fine. I'll just cut off.
Carl, you're absolutely fine, man. Nice and crisp and clear. And
yes.
James,
thank you. You sound normal to me, at least from here.
Relatively normal.
Very well. Well, I guess to kick this all off, I mean, I know who you guys are, and we're very close with James. We haven't had the pleasure yet of actually working with Carl, but I'm very well aware of who Carl is. So, James, why don't we, if you don't mind, my friend, why don't we start with you and just give everybody that's watching or listening just a quick rundown of exactly who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so my name is James Anito. As I clearly said it, and you guys are great friends. I love you guys both. Good to be back on. So I'm a paranormal investigator that's been involved with it for 16 years, since the early age of 15 years old. It's always been an interest of mine. I've been researching since a young age. Never had paranormal experience. I had traumatic experience as a child that is well documented within my life that I dealt with. And with those questions led me to the paranormal because of shows like Scooby-Doo, Scariest Places on Earth, and In Search of, and all these other fantastic shows that predate a lot of our time as well. And of course, like Charles Dickens and his writings and his literature. And so basically that all kind of came together, and I got involved into the field of demonology and ministry work. I've officially been ordained in the Old Catholic Church as a deacon, and I was a pastoral assistant, then deliverance minister, an ordained minister with the Church of Christ. So I have a theological background too, but yeah, that's really what kind of got me to demonology. I want to help people. I want to create awareness, the what ifs, the whatnots, and also get better myself by learning many different industries. I'm also a student in psychology at an accredited university. It's a long love. It's a long love of mine. We'll do it as long as I breathe.
So, Carl, how'd you get in?
I like spooky things. Why not? Go with it. No, I just was as a very young person, I was drawn to anything spectacular and nefarious and mysterious. I'll say. I was raised in a haunted house. Most days were business as usual, but we did have some paranormal activity going on there, so that was absolutely fascinating and somewhat scary at times. And my younger sister, and I used to play on a spirit board. And of course, that was when we got the answers. That was even more riveting and all that. And the paranormal activity seemed to upstep, and we were getting like tremendous poundings on the roof of the house, no tree branches over the house, and seeing the spirit form of a woman in the house. So, and my brother and sister and I experienced these things, not all at the same time, but sometimes we know things were going on. So naturally, I started reading about hauntings and the supernatural. In fact, that was one of my early readings was Hill and Williams' The Supernatural. And I remember when I was 11 years old, I read Kraft Ebbing's Psychopathia Sexualis, which dealt with a lot of serial killers, and just always interested. Not so much the dark. I say dark for lack of a better term. Things that were mysterious. And I wanted to get into paranormal investigating and didn't really have an outlet for it except on my own, my brother and I. Then I went to a lecture staged at Rhode Island College in Providence. And this was back in 1972. And the two speakers were Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Amazing.
Whom I heard a little bit about. They weren't quite as famous as they are now. Yeah.
Maybe a little.
Yeah, they were, and they gave such a nice presentation. I remember saying, "That's what I want to be when I grow up." And I got to know Ed and Lorraine Warren. Actually, Ed was doing some audience participation. Asking to raise our hands, and we've had this or that experience. And he actually called me up on stage, and I became part of the lecture. So I was invited to join a group based at the college called Pyro. Parapsychological Investigatory and Research Organization. Then we started investigating, and one of our early cases was actually that house on Rontop Road in Harrisville called the Conjuring House. Mm-hmm. Now James didn't come with me on that one. I missed him being there, but one impediment was not having been born at the time. So it's that's understandable why he couldn't have joined me. But James has been there many times since those early days. So that's basically how I became involved in it. I was always interested in exploring and coming up with theories, trying to say, not just that there are ghosts, and we see them sometimes, and we have evidence of them. What are they? What makes these things, these replicas of living people, if that's what they are?
Right. Yep, absolutely.
So, I've been pursuing it ever since.
Now, I can, from our standpoint, we met James when Dave and I we left our team and formed Paranormal Inc. in 2017. And the very first time we met James in person was at a Paracon that we were all in. And with my fascination with what James was doing in the field, I can relate to you, Carl, because I first familiarized myself with you in, I believe it was 2006, when like everyone else in the world started watching Ghost Hunters.
Yes.
And having a background in religion, which led me to today's paranormal, it was such like a breath of fresh air when the TV on and I would see someone doing this from more or less like a religious standpoint and actually offering help. So then when we met James, I was like, oh man, this is what he does. I mean, that was just like mind blowing to us because, not too many of when this started coming mainstream, did you see where people were actually out there viewing it from just a spooky standpoint and, oh, this is scary. And, it was actually some faith-based answers being offered. And that's exactly how we view it. So that was like right up our alley when we came to know who you guys were.
Rather than just, we affirm that you have a ghost in your house and like on to the next. And, it's like James and I try to intervene, intercede, advise, counsel, even from a psychological standpoint. If we can advise people, at least offer them, if not concrete answers, at least some suppositions and some advice. That's what our aim is.
Right. And James, I mean, our hats are off to you because the work you've done, and as long as you've been involved in this in the way that you are at such a young age is so impressive.
Yeah, when I first saw you in your collar, I thought I seen your kid running around here in a priest collar. What the? And then I got to know you, and you know my background as well, the faith, and yeah, it's like, oh wow, how did you get into this? So you really piqued my curiosity.
Well, I think the biggest thing is with me is that I've always been told I can't do something or can't do it. And I've always been told I wasn't good enough. And it's always enabled me to continue wanting to learn, or having questions within myself or the surroundings of what I've dealt with or what other people have dealt with that have maybe continue researching and kind of getting involved in fields that have some sort of ability to be used academically or hands-on to this field. I'm very multifaceted. I've been in school for computer science. I have a degree within that. I went ordained to ministries. Like I try to see things that I can adapt to this field. Like by my career, I'm an HVAC guy. I'm a project manager and estimator now. I've worked my way up from being a laborer, but still I've accumulated that knowledge how construction, the constructs of buildings can be affected or be a piece of the puzzle of why things are going on. I love knowledge, and I think why I love science so much. Good science is about continuously asking questions, and if you find an answer, ask more questions on that answer. And that's just how I am, and I'm always going to be like that because I don't always think that one thing is good enough.
This is for Carl. I have to ask you this, Carl, because no matter who we have on the show, whether they're what you do or a psychic medium or an investigator, I know the years you got into this, and that's impressive by itself.
Absolutely.
But if you were to sit down and just think about what you do, is there any one particular case automatically pops in your mind that's always at the top of the list that you helped on, as far as the demonology side or that you investigate?
Well, there are a few. I'm not sure which one I should center in on, but I suppose what first comes to mind, as far as being able to successfully help or guide people, make a difference in their lives, at least somewhat temporarily, would be the case way back and very early in my studies and in my career as a demonologist. It would go back to the situation in Providence, Rhode Island, that turned out to be a case of full-blown demonic possession. Mm-hmm. And I've encountered several since then. But I think I really intervened and made a difference for them because I was the one who stood my ground when everybody else was running out and running around. Mm-hmm. And I don't think what I did was so much heroic. I just didn't know what else to do except to stand up to this situation. I could either have exited and gone out to my car, going back to my parents' house, and I knew there was food in the refrigerator and it would be safe. And I just thought, why am I here? I don't belong here. This is nerve-wracking. But another part of me said, if I run out now, if I leave, it's not going to inspire any confidence in the people I'm trying to help. And I may never be able to go back into such a situation. I'm sure James relates to this as well. So I stood it out, not knowing what I was doing, but kind of making it up as I went along. And the subject, who was a 14-year-old boy, started, and he had done some freakish things that just shouldn't be capable of. And He started advancing towards me, and I just held up my hand and said, "Stop." And I gave him kind of a hug, put my hand on his back, and he was better. He was better after that. But that one stands out. It's a long story. I might have to take the whole show up talking about that. But yeah, that one would be it. And that goes back to 1980 in Providence, Rhode Island.
Let me ask you, Carl. Did being a man of religion, did religion lead you into the paranormal, or was it vice versa, where being interested in the paranormal led you into the religious side of it?
Well, I think I would have been, regardless of religious faith, I think I would have pursued that anyway. And
Right.
my faith is not, I wouldn't call it a strong one, really.
Mm-hmm.
I keep returning to faith, but, that wasn't my motivator. I must,
Right.
in the name of God, go out and help people. But of course, prayer has been called into what I do. And in fact, every intervention, it is incorporated prayer. But just because you don't know how something works or aren't too sure about its reality doesn't mean you don't invoke it sometimes. The sense of a higher power.
Right.
I think,
And James,
It is a cat, by the way.
I noticed there's a shadow presence there. Yeah. I was going to say play back your video afterwards. There's something there.
Carmen noticed that.
Yeah.
It's black ectoplasm, guys. We're going to Lilydale. Back days of Lilydale over here.
Yeah, she jumped up directly behind you at your 6 position.
And James, I need to tell you, man, the next time you're going to be featured on one of the shows or like you were last week or 2 weeks ago, you got to give us a heads up, man. I didn't know you was going to be on Haunting, and I'm just happened to watch it. And I'm like, when they were building up, I was like, oh, I know who this is going to be.
Yep.
I know who this is going to be. And I texted Dave, and I was like, hey, turn this on.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
on TV.
Well, next time I will, but I try to keep it hush hush. It wasn't like I think Carl and a few slight people actually knew, but I really I don't promote that stuff. It's not like I know it's not. I'm not saying this negatively to anybody that does. It's just not my thing, and I was also nervous of how they would portray me because I've turned down so many roles, and that's honest to God's truth. I've turned so many things down because what we do, especially what Carl and I do, it could be masqueraded differently. And even the show was a little off the kilter than what exactly actually occurred. And that's nothing against Mary Jo, but I wish they said a lot of things that I actually said and what my advice was. But so that's why I really didn't say anything, because I was kind of a little nervous to see how it was portrayed. I think they did a good job. It was very scary. It was great. And A Haunting always does a great thing. They're 11 seasons in, they do a hell of a good job to make a little horror pick. But it's not my gig, and it was great doing it. And the only reason I truly did it is because I wanted Caleb to see his dad on television. He always sees Carl on television. He always sees other friends he meets on television, and he's like, "Daddy, why never I see you?" Kind of how it's like. And I'm like, "Well, kid, I'll make it happen for you." And he watched it, and he was ecstatic, and that was enough pleasure to my eyes, my ears.
James, because of course, all of us be in Rochester in a week and a half. Will your son be with?
Yes, he will be.
How does he like it? Coming to the Paracons and all that good stuff.
Of course, he's imaginative, but I have to be stern with him to understand that, monsters do exist, but as long as you don't particulate on it, the monsters won't come into play. But he loves it. He loves the people. He loves going to old places. We went to one of the oldest theaters in Pennsylvania, Chambersburg, right? And he's been to Fort Mifflin. He loves exploring. He loves the oldness. He loves meeting new people, and so he loves it. And if he follows in my footsteps, great. If he doesn't, at least he had an interesting childhood that he'll always remember, and that's important to me.
Yeah,
definitely. That's one way to win. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. We were supposed to be in Rochester the past 2 years, but every time it drew near due to personal issues Dave and I had,
Yeah.
I had to bail.
Been a rough couple of years for me. But I've come out through the tunnel, and I'm smelling pretty clean at the end of the tunnel too. So,
But we're definitely looking forward to meeting Carl in person.
absolutely.
If I have too many
As am I.
questions for you, Carl, once we get there, just tell me to get the hell away from you. So it's going to be
Like that all the time.
it's
We'll have,
gonna be fun. But
we'll have a good time with it.
Carl, if you're able to just chat about it, what was the experience when you was on Ghost Hunters? Since, in my opinion, that was the show that kind of brought
Started
everything mainstream, to the public.
Yeah, it was hectic. It was interesting. You know, it was frustrating. Some, I don't know, I wasn't boring, but it was because, we would have professional disagreements, about how things should be, how the case should be conducted, because the television show did change things. Because TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, previously was grassroots. Go out and investigate in the cemetery, go to explore this person's haunted house in Maine. And the television show became all about the production. The television show swallowed up our original modus.
Right.
It was interesting. It's kind of fun to be interviewing. Well, let's just say it's a departure to be interviewing a client, somebody with a paranormally based problem, and you're talking to them, and they're not really there in the chair. You're talking to an empty chair, and it's got to be foleyed in or edited in later. And that's those kind of production things are funny. But
Right.
And I think it's more interesting what goes on behind the scenes than what happens in front of the camera. A lot of the interpersonal interaction is freaky, weird, and all that. But you do get to meet some very interesting people. We did travel some, and people with genuine issues, genuine problems, and a lot more talking and counseling went on, behind the cameras when they're not filming. And you honestly sometimes forget that the camera's there filming those productions. Whoa, wait, what did I say? Am I look all right? Am my hair combed? I was on television here. You kind of forget it after a while.
Right.
But that makes it all the more, the interaction with people genuine, let's say.
Right. Now, I mean, I guess this could have to do with being on TV, but in general, when a home is being investigated, whether like you and James are initiating the investigation or someone calls you in because they kind of made the determination that maybe something, out of their pay range. Now,
like called.
how does the client react or feel when they're being told, hey, this might be something demonic and we have to bring the specialists in? How do they perceive that when you first start working with them?
They become very nervous, but also excited and sometimes hopeful. But they say, "Oh, this is real," But when they hear it, and a so-called expert is coming in, which I would be that. James is that. We are experts. For quite a while, I shied away from saying we're experts. I'd say, experts in the unknowable, but somebody's got to address these issues, these problems. So it becomes very real to the person when the specialist is brought in. Like you're actually calling in a demonologist,
Right.
That's what I have now. So, those are visceral reactions you actually see that are captured on film. There is an air of artificiality about these shows during the production, but some of it is gritty, real. And when they capture that on camera, you're seeing their reactions. You're seeing our reactions.
Right. Now, James, I know, like when Dave and I do one of our lectures or what have you, people always ask us, like, what made us start doing this, what got us into this, whatever, and if it's scared. Have you ever had an instance where you went in to do what it is that you do and you were actually frightened yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I would be egotistical to say that I've never been fearful of the situations. I think there was at a time in my earlier youth. I'm 31 years old, so I'm still young. But in my early 20s, I was a little bit more arrogant in the ways I approached cases. I would go forward and utmost and gullibility and imagination more than anything, and then instead of trying to dissect a situation. But I always had that kind of emotion or a fear or fright, because that's a physiological thing that occurs, fright or flight. It's a brush moves. We think it's an animal. So of course, when you're going into a situation, you've only maybe spoken to that person vocally, visually. Now, of course, with technology, you only have a little bit of the story, their living arrangements and how they are. So I think you always go into a location with some sort of speculation, fear of what could occur. And a lot of the times I've dealt with cases, it's never really went the way I thought it would. It would actually be smoother than more difficult. Or if I thought it was too smooth, it would be more difficult. So you always have to have a level-headed shoulder. But I would say that the case that I had the most fright from was definitely the case I talked about, that I had a prolific nightmare. And I won't expound upon it too much because it'll take a lengthy time. But I had this nightmare that I really truly believe that a demonic infestation was involved with this family, and it was able to perceive into my dreams. And I killed the family in my nightmare, and everything I saw in my nightmare, to the home, to the people that I had never saw firsthand, appeared in that nightmare and was real in real life. And the reality of the nature, when I got there, the people were the same, the house was the same. The only difference was that I didn't brutally kill that family. So I would say that would be the instance that I'd have most fear in my life doing this, because there's that what happens if I pull a Lizzie Borden right now and whack all of them? There'd be a different communication right now. I might be in prison, and you might be talking about James Needle, the guy that went there to get rid of demons but killed the whole family. But that didn't happen, and you play that in your head. And I still think about it to this day, whoa, it was a life-altering situation in my life, because it showed me for the first time these things can penetrate yourself being, and change your reality in the confines of your brain and your mind and the way you think and your consciousness. So that was definitely daunting.
Right. Now, Carl, for those that are watching now or will be tuning in later, through all the work you've done, I mean, there's so many ways the demon can get in or take over or what have you. What if you had to narrow the field down a little bit? What is the cause when investigating it from a demonic side that you see has, I guess you could say, brought the demon forth or started this possession? Do you come across where it's kind of like the same thing again and again that's causing these happenings, or is it just a vast variety of reasons?
Oh, both actually, because if I had to note a common factor, it's when the demonic presence. I wish we could say something else than demon, like influence and anything, but nothing. None of the nomenclature really suffices. These things. When it feels cornered and threatened, when it's going to be challenged, when it's which actually reveals it. I'm surprised they aren't more subtle, but right. I guess sometimes they are. But when this entity feels threatened, feels like it's going to be challenged, feels like it might be driven out, that's when things get chaotic. That's when it tends to reveal itself. It's almost like it's being trapped in a fire, and it's writhing. It doesn't want to be revealed, but it has to.
It's in panic mode when it has to leave.
Yeah, that's when something might fly across the room, or the picture might invert itself, and or the chair might move backwards, sometimes with the person in it. And I've seen poltergeist activity too, which is absolutely fascinating. And sometimes I refer to a demon as a poltergeist with a really lousy attitude.
Right.
And
now,
it's when it feels threatened. That's when it starts to ride. That's when you notice more overt paranormal activity.
Now, Carl, you or James couldn't answer this, but you come across a lot that people and clients actually make these actions happen and unknowingly invite things in. You know, they may think they're investigating paranormal or just out having a spook good time.
Perfect case that we brought you guys in.
And actually bring the demon in, you know, not knowing they did it. Do you guys come across that a lot?
Yeah, I have. I wouldn't say a lot, but it has happened enough times. I
Right.
remember it, but where the demon is like and I'll say demon because what else am I going to say? It's like a random bullet that's ricocheting.
Right.
It goes
Right.
for a target. If it can't infiltrate somebody's mind and thoughts, it'll move over to the other one, even if that person is one of the paranormal investigating team. And I've seen that happen. A case that I was just on the fringe of getting to know, James Anito. He was almost involved in that case. It was just the timing by a few months that he was not. And this case took place in Orange, Massachusetts, and back in 2010. And this entity, you know, the lead investigator was trying to be very heroic and take it upon himself, you know, the co-founder of the team. And it did. It accepted his invitation and went into him in the ways that he didn't expect. So some days it'll go around or it'll hit somebody else. I'll notice someone, all of a sudden, one of the investigative team is starting to get woozy. They look like they're going under or something. Suddenly they're erratic, and it's in them. And we'll go to another person looking for a refuge, moving back and forth. And I want to say that James's testimony about that vivid and disturbing dream he had, I think that was kind of a rite of passage for James. I think that was the time where he had to confront, can I do this? You know, this is real stuff I'm dealing with. You know, can I confront it? Can I be strong enough and detached enough to combat these forces? And I think that was a pivotal time for him when he overcame that.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying there? Because he could have been victimized totally. He could have said, this is not for me, I'm not going to do it anymore. But that's not what happened.
Wow. It's just, I find this whole topic, I mean, I know I'm usually real chatty all over the place, but this topic is just so interesting to me because, you know, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. My interest in the paranormal started as a young child.
Yes.
Going to Catholic school, and we hear all these stories of it was either an angel, a demon, or a ghost. You know what I mean? That back 40, almost 50 years ago, that's all we really knew at the time as children was, you know, something bad was caused by a demon, something good was probably an angel, or we just had a ghost. And I would hear these stories that priests would tell us about demonic possession. And, you know, it was shortly after like the whole craze swept the world. It was so, I always viewed any type of clergy or anyone that was involved in demonology or exorcisms, they were, to me, like, I'm big into superhero, but they were kind of like superheroes to me. Like, oh shoot, the priests are coming in, or the demonologists are coming in. This is about to get real, you know. So when I actually saw this, like I said, when I was introduced to Carl from watching Ghost Hunters, it took it to the next level for me because I'm like, I know these guys are going to come in and they're going to take
like
care
a
of
kid in a
business.
cage.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people that, you know, I mean, I don't have a fascination with demons or anything, but I just love that aspect of the field of when people come in and just provide that.
It's a departure. You know, it's something different you don't normally see. And I will say another common factor is that always that time, I don't know if James will concur with this, but that time of feeling isolated, there's always a time when it's a heavy entity, you know, subject, something threatening. It's always that time where I feel I'm alone in this. You know, I feel alone. Why am I doing this? It's it's unsettling in here. I don't really want to be here, going through the motions. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm apprehensive about what's going to occur. What could transpire.
How do you guys know, like when you're in a case and you have cleared the person or the land or the residence or what have you, of the bad stuff. How do you know? At what point do you know it's gone for real? That it's not trying to be a trickster and wait for you to leave, going to flare up. Place is bad.
James, what would you say about
Yeah,
that?
I think it's an environmental thing. I think it's as close to nurture as possible. You know, I think Carl and I and the other people that are involved in exorcisms or demonology, you call it superheroes, but I think we have a different dichotomy. I think we have a different buildup of who we are. We're able to process those emotions that come to us a lot faster and handle them a little bit more professionally than maybe somebody else would. So if a situation at hand comes to us, we're able to kind of trench forward with our grit that we've kind of encountered in our lives. And so a lot of us have either gone through a traumatic experience, but yeah, no. So I totally lost my subject on that point, but yeah, no, I definitely think it's definitely a different buildup of who you are, of the individual you are. And when you're dealing with these cases, how you would know with how they are gone is simple. You know, I think it's I don't think Carl and I, maybe some other people claim they're psychic mediums or of the clair or have ESP or some of the other things, the nomenclature that words that have been expressed by people. They say that they are this, but I don't think Carl and I do. I use the word discernment, but I think that's more because I've gone through a traumatic childhood. I understand what negative emotion is as a person. And I feel that like I went and I'm able to understand, okay, I'm going into this environment. I feel something off. Like, okay, I can tell by how an individual speaks to somebody that they're negative towards each other, that there's uprift, there's fighting, or there's these situations going at hand. So when that environment, the barometric pressure changes, like all certain scientific things that could occur in atmosphere, if there's heightened emotion, when you start to feel that and your body becomes more peaceful, that the people around you become more peaceful, I think that's a good point to look at when towards if something is gone or not. And of course, that could be just a facade. It could be gone for a day. It could be gone for a week. And then when you leave and they don't follow the advice that you give them, then it could, of course, assert itself back again. But so I think that's how I'm able to tell. I think it's because of, like I said, over nurturing the period of time. Like I've kind of understood the environment. But anybody can do that outside of paranormal too. That's an occupational thing. You know, you go to work every day hating your job. You're gonna put that out. You're gonna have the grim face. You're gonna know that you hate your job. It's gonna be apparent. It's gonna be shown like a billboard. So I think it's in the same essence how we kind of detect or understand there could be a relievance of what we're dealing with at that point in time.
Now, exactly how you just explained it makes absolute sense. Is that go along with if someone's claiming, say they would call Dave and say, hey, man, we have some paranormal activity going on. Could you check it out? How does the determination, as far as you all, to where this might just be it's something more than a spirit or someone trying that it's teetering on the fence where it might be more along the demonic side? Is there certain, for people watching, is there certain indications or signs or anything like that to where they may need to seek help from someone like you and Carl?
Yes, I think it's instinctual that at a certain point you know what to feel, you know what to look for, and something in you don't want to come out and say, we think you have a demon, we think you have something inhuman. You know, you want to wait for more confirmation. But that process is going because we've trained ourselves to look for certain things, certain criteria, and when it starts to actually feel darker in the room and the light is dimming, you wonder, is it a trick of my eyes, or could it be something that's a little warning sign? And then we go into that drive we have that it becomes instinctual. You know, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You don't want to come out and say it, but you're starting to suspect it's something darker and heavier, and you start to look for signs, and it will give signs. Yeah, if it is inhuman, and again, we have to revert to the basic terms. If it's something inhuman, then it's going to reveal itself as such, and it won't take long. especially if you're there to challenge it. The spirit, the demon, whatever, knows why we're there. It's got a sense of that, and it starts before you even start any confrontation. It's confronting us at that point. And James and I, whenever we were working together, and that we would look at each other, we kind of with an acknowledgement, but we rarely get the chance to work together in that capacity. Sometimes we have and will. Then you start taking the measures, and you start talking to the person that's the target of that demon, and you start asking them certain questions without saying, I'm asking the demon these questions. I'm trying to, verify that you've got a demonic haunt. You start asking certain questions of them. Like, how do you feel now? Like, are you at ease? Are you at peace? And they'll react. The subject will react if it's got that agitation in it, if it's the target of the demon.
Now, do you guys use anything other than religious artifacts, Holy Bible, holy water, crosses, etc.? Do you use any type of scientific devices?
Well, recording, detecting devices, anything that's going to measure it, barometric pressure, radiation, the standard EMF, but they're notoriously unreliable, but they will detect some spikes in the atmosphere if there's electric discharge. So things like that, and certainly an audio recorder. We want that. That's probably the most valuable tool.
Yeah, and videography
all you've got
too.
If all you've got is an EMF detector, a K2, use it.
What would you say? What's essential? A K2 is not a ghost hunting device. A K2 is an electrician's tool. James, you know that as well. It's made to detect electrical output and electrical fields around.
Of course, yeah. Even like Carl noted, basic EMF meters are for not a constant application. A person emits electricity. We let off static electricity if there's a room that's 90 degrees, 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and we come in at usually our 98, 99 degrees. You create a static electricity buildup because there's a temperature change. Anytime there's temperature change, static electricity builds up. So if you have that EMF meter at a constant reading, you're going to get false positives. Anytime an electrician, which is most of the people that use EMF meters professionally and scientifically, of course, HVAC technicians too with line voltage or low voltage, it's a pitter pattern reads. You go up to an outlet, see if it's live, then you turn off the EMF meter. If it doesn't have a constant anymore, okay, there's no signal or there's no power going to this outlet. So a lot of the applications we use are, like Carl said, audio. I think still can be, of course, misconstrued and lead you down the wrong path. But I think if you use video, audio, and of course the shared experiences people have, I felt this and oh, you felt that, but it's not contrived. It's not talked about openly, but you both have different notes, and you're like, oh, okay. Because if you say it outwardly, you can change that person's reality instantaneously, and you might not even think that you did. But if you're writing notes and I heard this audibly, and then somebody else did, and you write it down, and then you come to an agreement. Oh, you heard that? We didn't talk about it, right? So there's ways that you can look at it, but we definitely try to go the scientific route. We try to collect data. I'm working on a case right now, and Carl knew I'd probably talk about it. I can't talk much about it. I actually will have things to show for it. I think this is one of the first cases where the client's been so open and allowing their story to be told. Some things are going on in this right now. And I jumped to the psychiatric route. I thought this person could be crazy just of everything I heard. There's just been certain things that have been occurring that have been caught on video. Something that was caught on video today that will blow my mind if this is true. So we have this documentation, especially, of course, demonologists, and if we're trying to work with the Catholic Church or another church that requires this data, like the Church of England or Anglican Church, is that they require data before an exorcist is able to come out. They want to see a video of preternatural phenomenon. They want to see this audio or hear it, and not see it, but hear it. They want to see why this could be more than something psychological. And that doesn't denote to the fact that there could be something psychological at play. But if there is actual phenomenon that is that is able to be documented. Like Carl has been on many shows, and they've showed documentation of such activity. I wasn't on it, but one of the cases that I did in Cumberland, Rhode Island, for my ghost story that was on in one of my cases that ECPRT had investigated, and Keith, Carl's brother, had been involved with prior, and then I got Father Bob Bailey involved, was that they caught the shadow figure that was bigger than the tallest man they had, which was like 6'5", James Holroyd, big tall dude. But this shadow figure was as solid as it can be, and it took up almost the whole frame of the door, if not the whole frame of the door. And doors are no shorter than 7'1". Even in older times, they were nothing shorter. So this object was 7'1", and that was easy enough to say, hey, there's something here. Why is this tall? Unless Andre the Giant lives here.
Carl, in our chat, our friend Colette, her question is, have you basically ever been on an investigation or whatever, client or the person there had a demon in them, but was unaware that they were under any sort of possession?
Yes, I have. There was a case in Danielson, Connecticut, where this a woman, a fairly young woman, had something that was making her react, and we tried to isolate that. Like when we say certain things, when we hold religious objects, it's actually right before you get to Killingly in Danielson, Connecticut. I don't even remember the exact address. But when we happened to, like, I opened my briefcase and just, was setting things aside, but with a motive. I took out a cross, not a crucifix, but a cross that one would wear as a pendant. And she kind of shivered at that. And, but I don't think she was trying to impress us. I think that was a genuine gut reaction on her part. And she did not feel that she was possessed unless it was something subconscious. She didn't seem to acknowledge any beginnings of possession or oppression at that time. Yeah, there have been a few, but her situation seemed to be resolved because we were there and we talked to her about it without ever saying, I think you're possessed. We just prayed over her and kind of did an intercession right then, a deliverance. My brother was basically in charge of that. And yeah, there have been some times, but mostly they know something's up. Like a case in Edmond, Oklahoma that happened in 2010. The girl was starting to being taken over by a spirit, and she didn't want to acknowledge it. And as we conducted a more thorough investigation, we realized something was happening. Her mother said she'd be becoming distant, that she was staring vacantly, and she would react uncharacteristically to any kind of emotional upset. And so we determined that she was under possession. And then she did react as that. And that was a violent and minute-to-minute unpredictable situation.
Right. How come, this is a question for me. How come other certain exorcisms, or if you're clearing a house or whatever from something dark, how come some cases take longer than others? Is it the energy that demon has, or is it the person unwillingly is holding that demon there?
There's a number of factors, wouldn't you say, James? Like,
it's both, but it's more so with the eye of the beholder. To be honest with you, I definitely think. I know people that deal with it hate to hear it, but it has a lot to do with themselves, their willpower, their resilience, resilient nature. Because what happens with a demonic entity, even in a negative circumstance, even in a negative person, they break you down little by little to get the joy of hurting you. And a demon, in the wording of it, its ability is to find, like Carl said, sometimes it's that bullet ricocheting and finding the target. It finds that person that it can adapt to, it can molest and manipulate. And if the person allows it to linger, and I know some people say, oh, well, I don't allow it, but they invoke into their fear and aren't forcibly motivated to overcome this. They're weakened from some trauma. So The strength of the entity can be play a part, or the force, but it's mostly the person that keeps it. It's like we're the battery, in an inanimate object. Like
Right.
If the battery's gone, the toy doesn't operate unless it's paranormal and somehow moves because it's manipulated by a force. But it's very rare to see this in psychokinetic energy. Is very rare. It doesn't happen much. I definitely think that the person's integral, and fields like psychology, parapsychology, are integral pieces of the puzzle when you're working with somebody and trying to have them overcome a spiritual affliction.
Right. Very good. Well, gentlemen, we are almost out of time
Already.
So before we let you go and give you our most sincere, heartfelt thanks for joining us,
and no singing and dancing. We're not going to put you through that.
how can people find you guys?
Yes.
Oh, it's fairly easy. James, you want to give our handle for the website and other means? And I can.
I made it life easy. I just put it right at the bottom of the screen.
Definitely.
I meant to run it the whole show, but I forgot.
Well, demonology.org, Demonology Incorporated, Panorama Paranormal, Do Demonology on Facebook, Carl L. Johnson on Facebook, James Zanito on Facebook, jameszanito.com. There's many ways to reach us, and usually, like if it's needed, we come together and work together. That's how you can reach us. And we have a show that will, of course, be airing once again soon, hopefully, where we have a YouTube podcast and Facebook podcast, Do Demonology. We have like 30 episodes, so go watch them. We talk about a lot of specific topics.
Nice. Gentlemen, we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
It was
lots
an
of love.
absolute honor, man. I am just so intrigued by what you do, and it's because of the field you're in and folk from back in the day before I knew you guys. It's what helped me go from just studying religion and spirituality and taking that step into the paranormal. So thank you for everything that you guys do. It's amazing. Absolutely. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys for a weekend in a week and a half in Rochester.
We'll be there on the 24th, so not sure when you guys get there, but party's on him.
We'll be there Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Carl.
I'm not a crook.
We'll see you guys soon.
Lots of love, guys.
All right. Good night, guys.
I love them guys.
I could have him on for hours.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just
I could pick the brain for hours.
That whole realm, man, is just so fascinating to me. And it's
the only reason why I wasn't like chiming in more during this show is I've literally tried to keep up with this computer. It's been acting weird. I'm like literally band-aiding the show together.
Started acting up on my interview yesterday, and it just hasn't recovered.
Yeah, so I may have to wipe the computer out and redo
Guys,
it.
In 2 weeks, we will not be doing an episode because we'll be in Rochester,
New York,
at the Parafest. So, based on what our network, LFE DB Radio, has set, we hope to maybe do some sort of live from the event. Yep. So we'll be there. Keystone State will be there. Ted and City, we're all on the same umbrella, so
all in the same contract. So we'll definitely be there. I'll bring all the camera and everything just in case we can run one. But if not, we'll see in 4 weeks.
Thank you for watching,
guys. Lots of love. God, we'll talk to you along the way.
You've been listening to Step Into the Paranormal with Ernie Atwell and David Seiler. Thank you for listening, and listen in next week for another topic and more great guests right here on WLFE DB Radio Network.